Hey everyone, hope you're having a good day. So in this video I'm going to be showing you the entire process of having my very old roof replaced. In last week's video I showed the installation of the new roof lights from Velux, and as part of that video I included a few little clips of the roof being prepared and renewed. So at the very start here you might see a couple of clips that you may have already seen before, just in case you were experiencing a bit of deja vu. So in the village where I stay, a lot of the buildings are incredibly old, some dating back to the 1700s, and a lot of the buildings use these old style pan tiles, which after a bit of digging, I found out are around 100 years old. These tiles do have a really nice rustic, weathered effect, but as I said in my last video, they're quite hard to come by, so are not easily replaced. And because so many of the ones on this roof had become broken or unusable, it just made sense to completely repair and renew the timber, underlay and add some new tiles. Really just starting a new chapter with this building and hopefully giving it a new lease of life. Now, just in case you did miss last week's video, the team doing the work comprised of Sean Paul in the black, he's the joiner who's managing the entire renovation for me, Jacob, the roofer and owner of his self-titled roofing business, McGill Roofing and Rough Casting, Lewis, who is Jacob's apprentice, and Isaac, Jacob's brother, who was doing some labouring during his summer holidays. I just quite like letting you all know who's who in these videos and shouting out their businesses where possible. I feel like that's only fair when I'm awkwardly filming them for hours on end as they work. So the first job, as I covered in the previous video, was removing the old tiles, timber and felt before cleaning up the roof in preparation of the repair and renewing of the roof. With the roof stripped and cleaned, the next step was replacing some of the wood which makes up the base layer of the roof. These planks of wood are called sarking boards. Over time, because of exposure to rain and snow which had come in through broken tiles and unsealed gaps, these sarking boards had become quite rotten and in some parts had just fallen apart completely, which was causing water to come inside. To fix this, the guys would cut out the unhealthy parts of the roof before measuring up and cutting new lengths of sarking board, which would then be nailed down. With this base layer of the roof mended, the next step was adding the underlay, which, as I mentioned in my last video, offers a second line of defense against any rain or snow that might get blown up and under the tiles with the wind. After the underlay was down, Jacob and Lewis began nailing down these vertical lengths of wood called counter battens, which Isaac was feeding to them throughout. Once all of these vertical counter battens are laid, horizontal tiling battens are then fixed on top of them. As the name would suggest, tiling battens are what the actual tiles get fixed onto. I didn't actually capture any footage of them laying down the horizontal tiling battens because I had to leave to take care of some business before they got to this part, but I came back the next morning and this is what it looked like. It did rain overnight, but that didn't really matter because, as I said in my last video, the underlay is weatherproof and can actually be left exposed for up to a month, so one night of light rain wasn't a big deal. After the remaining battens were put down, the next job was installing the newly delivered tiles. Whilst I do think it would have been nice to keep the old weathered tiles, I think 100 years is a good innings for them. Given that some had broken and the rest were likely to follow eventually, it just made sense to go with new replacements. Additionally, putting new tiles down meant that I was able to get a guarantee on the roof lasting. Jacob told me that with new tiles, he can offer a 15-year guarantee on them, but if he was just going to be putting the old ones back on after repairing the timber, he can't offer any guarantee on them standing the test of time, which is totally understandable. Obviously, there is a jump here from having no roof windows to having roof windows. In my last video, the focus was on the roof light installation process, so if you want to see that video, I'll drop a link below. I just wanted this video to be focused on just the roof. I prefer doing episodes of this renovation series where I just focus on one key part and keep the videos under 10 minutes long. It's a more manageable workload for me, and I feel like those shorter videos have less risk of being boring. Completely off topic, but one thing I didn't mention in the last video was how my legs were from just walking over the roof to film this process. I really wasn't doing anything and I could barely walk at the end of the day, so I can't imagine how Jacob, Lewis, Isaac and Sean Paul feel when actually carrying things and doing work on that slope. I did ask Jacob about the toll that this job takes on your knees, because you always hear of tradesmen's health not being that great in their later years. I asked him if there was anything younger guys are doing differently these days to look after themselves better, to avoid the joint issues that some of the older guys ended up getting, but he said that because of the angle you're at, plus carrying tiles over the roof, there's just not really much you can do to offset or avoid that strain. Moving over to the other side of the roof, Jacob started cutting through the sarking so they could install the vented tiles for improved airflow. Having good air circulation in your roof space is important because it stops the buildup of mold and mildew, which can end up rotting the timber. I'm not a roofer, but I'm assuming that's why the wood was previously so rotten and damaged on both sides of the roof when they took up the old tiles. I don't recall seeing any tile vents before, so I'm assuming poor airflow was likely the culprit there. With all of the tiles laid on both roof faces, the final step of the re-roofing process was the installation of a dry ridge system for the ridge tiles across the top. Rather than taking the old school, old-fashioned approach of securing the tiles with sand and cement, the dry ridge system secures the tiles with screws and clamps, with waterproof elements beneath the screws which divert water away from the joints. There are various reasons why this dry system is considered better than the old-fashioned sand and cement approach, with one being the sand and cement approach was quite a time-consuming method. Perhaps more importantly, the old-fashioned method just didn't stand the test of time. Because of weather and changes in temperature, the cement would always end up cracking and fall apart over time, which would leave the roof exposed to the elements. By using this dry ridge system, you use a much more efficient process and end up with a cleaner and more secure finish. I always like to include a little before and after, so here's what the roof looked like at the very start, and here are some afters of both sides. I'm pretty delighted with the result, and I'm glad this old building now has a renewed layer of protection. As with the last video, I'll include a link to the Facebook page for Jacob's roofing business in the video description. If you're in Fife or Central Scotland and need a roofer, I highly recommend him. I'll also include a link to Sean Paul's Instagram. As I said before, he'll be uploading little behind the scenes sneak peeks of this project, so be sure to follow him for that. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate you taking a second to leave a like and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one.